Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. With the World Championship just around the corner, one of the key storylines is where is Pred going to go after this event is over? Could he join OpTic if Huke doesn't necessarily deliver the results they want at this tournament? But if OpTic even further underperform expectations, is Ghosty's spot in jeopardy as well? That's been a discussion point of the last few days. I'm not so convinced, but we're going to dive into the discussion today, and I'll also do a bracket prediction for how I see the event potentially going. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts and the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Let's dive straight in. First of all, as Formal says, happy birthday to Nagafen. He was involved, I'm pretty sure, in the Paris Legion, or sorry, Vegas Legion this year. I still get that wrong sometimes, so it's kind of funny how that lives on in the memory, unfortunate as it is. So I think he was working with them sometime. Hopefully he can continue doing something like that in the future as well. Did want to quickly touch on this because yesterday they actually increased the base health in Warzone, at least for Season 4, up to 150, and it made some changes that the player base actually wanted to see. Can you believe it? So I don't know if they forced Infinity Ward to backtrack on this, or Infinity Ward have said, all right, you know what, maybe you are right and our game is dying and we need to listen to the community a little bit more. But this is not going to get applied for multiplayer, this health increase. Imagine you turn up to champs and all of a sudden the health is up to 150. But still, it's very interesting to see that they actually might be starting to listen to community feedback. So there's a little bit of optimism on that, but I don't imagine there's all that much, to be honest. There was also this from Keshav, who kind of runs and co-founds the Charlie Intel page, confirming that because the page has been somewhat critical of the game in the studio, they no longer get invited to events, which is maybe not a massive surprise. It's how these organizations operate, right? If you don't like slobber on the knob, as it were, then you don't get invited. I don't know why I've said it like that, but you guys know what I'm getting at, right? So it's kind of surprising maybe in some ways, but yeah, anyway, they're going to keep doing good work over there at Charlie Intel for sure. Let's move on from that and talk about champs quickly, because it's coming around just around the corner. The initial world champions, the inaugural world champions, Killer, Miracles, Parasite, and Karma, of course, Freako Impact, way back in the good old days in 2013 for Black Ops 2. But OpTic are a really interesting question going into this tournament. They are, for sure, the biggest unknown factor to me. I think most of the teams, FaZe, for example, like their minimum they can probably get here is top 4. Maybe there's a crazy bracket where they get top 6, but I think they're like FaZe, you'd think they'll be top 2 probably, but their floor is probably top 4, right? It's really difficult to see FaZe not getting top 4 and maybe just top 3, to be honest. You look at a team like Subliners, a team like Thieves, you know, their minimum and their maximum is possibly a win, but probably the low for some of those teams you'd think is top 4 based on the brackets. And some teams, you look at a Boston, their maximum is probably top 6, their lowest is top 8. So the floor and the ceiling of these teams is all over the place. OpTic's ceiling is first, their floor legitimately might be 8th this tournament. Like, we really don't know, because if they play as they did at Major 5, their floor is 8th. Absolutely, they can lose to both of the teams they play in the first couple of rounds. So, like, that's the biggest variable to me. Most of the other contenders, they should be good enough to secure 4th or secure 6th at a bare minimum. OpTic, you still don't really know, based on how they played at Major 5. So this is why this team is really interesting to many, this event. We have no real idea what OpTic is going to turn up. We don't know, are they back in business as they were online before going into Major 5 in Toronto, or are they going to get exposed again as they did there? Are they going to lose the map? Are they going to lose a bit of composure and then start challenging one by one for the rest of the tourney? That's not exactly ideal. So no Scump this time, no Crimsix of course as well, and maybe there's a world in which Scump, because we thought this was going to be Scump's last tourney, right? I think it would have been his 100th tourney or whatever, I forget exactly the numbers, but I think it would have worked out to be his final event at Champs, and it would have been really cool, but it never happened because he decided the team was too chaotic and he was going to call it a day mid-season. iLLeY was on this team for some time, Prolute was on this team for some time as well, even last season, but now Ghosty has been the man. Ever since he joined the team as head of iLLeY, they immediately took a step forward. Okay, the online run and the start of Major 3 wasn't pretty, but ever since then, Ghosty's done a great job for the team. The guy likes to talk trash, he's obviously a vocal character, and he's led this team very well. Done exactly what they needed. Was in some ways, to be honest, a pack-a-punch version of iLLeY. He was kind of what iLLeY was meant to be in some senses, and ever since iLLeY came back from his injury, he wasn't maybe quite the same player, but also the leadership elements weren't necessarily there so much, and Ghosty has taken over a lot of that type of stuff. So I think that Ghosty deserves a lot of credit for the way that OpTic have turned it around, maybe even the most credit, but fundamentally, they underperformed at Major 5, and if they don't deliver a good result at Champs, is Ghosty's spot in jeopardy? I would say that it potentially is. That's the discussion here that Paris Parasite has, as to whether Ghosty can actually end up on the bench next year for OpTic, whether he could go to a different team, or whether they should just keep him around.
I could see a world where if OpTic doesn't place too well, but and they go out and make changes, I could see a world where if Dan isn't offered by another CDL team, maybe at worst Dan gets put on the bench. He'll still be on OpTic, just on the bench as a reserve and just in case, and then maybe they try to go after somebody like Octane or even what you said, maybe Drazah. I could see a world where that happens if Dan doesn't play well or they place terrible, because yeah, I think Dan brought a lot to this team. I've been a big fan of Dan this entire time, but if he's not putting up good performances on just like Huke isn't putting up good performances and they still struggle, I could see a world where maybe they consider not fully keeping him on the team.
Bro, then he's gonna go to Thieves. He's gonna beat them. It's gonna be.
I'm just saying there could be a world where something like that potentially happens.
Shit, bro. Like they have a player. I think they should be very patient with Dan. I think letting him walk is going to be a massive mistake because I think that guy's got upside.
So hyped for champs. OpTic winning it all. No jinx. It's gonna be crazy. I think there's 5 teams that can win the event going into the event. I think there's 5 teams that have like an actual shot. I think unfortunately, if I'm just gonna throw teams out there, I'm going to say Minnesota, Boston, and Seattle. I just don't have them really having a shot to win. But you never know, to be honest. It is Call of Duty, and it is Call of Duty MW2. But I don't see any of those 3 teams having a shot.
So I think most OpTic fans and most fans in general know that Ghosty's done a lot for this team, as he most certainly has, and Parasite's not denying that. I mean, look, he likes Ghosty. They get on well, and I think it was even Parasite that had a part to play in Ghosty getting this gig in the first place. Now, he comes into the roster. They've done well. He was in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. I think Scrappy's probably got that one locked down. His numbers are pretty good, but they're not expected to be fantastic, right? I mean, he's not there. He's there to facilitate fundamentally. He's there to do the leadership. He's there to do the communication, to be the walking UAV. And we know that JP Kress, the analyst, gave a lot of credit to Ghosty for that, which is very high praise, right? Any comparison to Formal is incredibly high praise. But still, when you look at this roster, who is the least jobbable to most jobbable? Shotzzy is the least jobbable for sure. He's going to be there. Dashy is, I guess, the second least jobbable. But I mean, saying that, he has been dropped like 3 times in the last couple of years. But still, you'd think that now, and I know that Hex did make this point as well, after all the saga, he was like, look, Shotzzy and Dashy, those are the guys we're building around, and the new guys we bring in, Huke and Ghosty, you know, they're not necessarily in the same category, right? It's not guaranteed they're going to be there next year. Huke is, you would think, the most vulnerable just because of the upgrades potentially in his position. We talked about Pred, we talked about Envoy, we talked about other options there. There's not many other options for Ghosty, right? Like, a leadership flex player is not so easy to find. iLLeY they thought was going to be that guy for some time. It didn't really work out. There isn't many other options in that category, right? Maybe a guy like a Drazah, right? There might be a chance with Drazah. He's pretty vocal. He could work. But most of the other leadership ARs are ARs. You look at an Octane. Like, is Octane and Dashy going to work? Probably not. In the same way that Formal and Dashy didn't really work, or even Slasher and Dashy back in the day didn't really work. Like, you really just want Dashy to be your main and to then have, you know, your flex iGel and Ghosty, and it's difficult to find players in the league that you can actually upgrade from Ghosty with. But fundamentally, if OpTic crash out of this tournament, top 8 or something, they have to consider a 2-man change, surely. Not saying they should do that, but they'll make some change if they fail, and they might have to look at a 2-man change if there's other options. So, you know, there's not many characters around the league that you would look at to really effectively replace. I mean, Arcitys, but I'm not so convinced of that one at the moment. So I think the options are relatively few and far between for players that can actually replace Ghosty. So I think you can be relatively confident that his spot should be safe, as long as they have a solid performance, right? But if they do bomb out of the tournament, then, you know, the questions will be raised about whether a 2-man change is necessary rather than just a 1-man change that probably most people feel like is going to happen after champs if OpTic don't win, as they might do, but we'll get into that just about now. So I did want to run down my predictions for this tournament, just an overview, and there's some hot takes in here, right? And I think it's especially relevant to the discussion that we've just had. So this is CDL Scum Intel's one, and honestly, his predictions the last couple of months, for whatever he's predicted, have been pretty damn good. So I definitely will take this with some, like, a degree of credit, because he's got Solid as winning, FaZe runner-up, Hydra MVP, Dark Horse Seattle, probably the only realistic Dark Horse, because at least they've won an event before. I'm not sure Rokkr can really they can make a run, but I don't think they can make it all the way. So I think the Seattle's the good shout. And he's actually gone for Toronto biggest flop, which is pretty interesting because, as I've said a couple of times now, one of the top 5 teams has to get top 6. That's how it works. So here we go. This is the bracket, and I'll just run through what I think. I'll do this kind of quickly, but we'll just get right on. So I've got FaZe taking down Surge. We'll keep it quick. I've also got Thieves beating Ultra. I'm going to say 3-2, but I feel like I'm not so convinced in Ultra's game 5s, to be honest. And okay, then FaZe Thieves, I'll give FaZe a 3-1 in that one. They usually have their number. OpTic, I think, should take down Boston. I love a good 3-1 fashion. You guys know this. Rokkr, I don't know. I'll give them a map against Subliners. Maybe even a 3-2, actually, but I think you'll get the job done. Losers, I've got Ultra taking down Surge. Maybe 3-2. I think Surge can try and do something there. Okay, Breach, they're going to lose to Rokkr, and then Thieves are going to win this series 3-1 or something. Then we get to this series, the OpTic versus Subliners. This is where things are difficult to predict, and I think Subliners are going to win this. I think they should be favored right now. I've got them winning it, and this is the way the bracket goes, that OpTic will come down to losers to play probably Ultra or Thieves. If they were to play Thieves here, OpTic are not favored. If they're to play Ultra here, that's also a team that's given them a lot of problems. So my hot take is the OpTic get top 6. That's my hot take. I've got Ultra beating them 3-2 and knocking them out of the tourney. I've then got, should I take Thieves here? I'll take Thieves to beat Toronto, and then I guess the upper side, I'll actually take Subliners in this winners finals to win against FaZe 3-2, and then I've got FaZe taking down these guys again, and then the grand finals turns out to be FaZe New York, and I don't know, I'll take FaZe. I think I'll take FaZe like 5-3 or something. I think like with 4 S&Ds in the finals, FaZe should have enough in the tank, especially because they're the better control team right now. So anyway, it's a pretty bland prediction, probably this one, apart from OpTic getting top 6, which I think is a bit of a hot take. So some of you guys are probably going to take this as if I'm like hating on OpTic, but I don't really think that's true, to be honest. I just think that if they play the Subliners, a team that I would favor against them right now because they just won the previous event, and then they drop to losers and play Toronto or Thieves, either way, that's going to be a hard match for them, right? So I don't know. OpTic could certainly make it through. They could win this entire tournament, but their ceiling and floor are so far apart that I just don't know what to expect from these guys. So we'll see how badly those predictions age, I'm sure, over the next couple of days. And just to quickly mention this before we close out, there are 7 players this year that are going to make their World Championship debut. There were also 7 players last year. The best at placing was 3rd. So, this is the thing for Ghosty, but also for Scrappy and for Hicksy and these guys that are expected to do quite well. The best placing last year was a 3rd place, but in history, there have been some rookies that have won champs, but it's happened definitely few and far between. So very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.